our main topic that we're planning on discussing is weapons, which I saw recently. I don't remember exactly when, maybe a week ago. No, Sunday, last Sunday. Saw this last Sunday in theaters, and had some definitely thoughts and opinions and things I wanted to talk about and discuss because this is one of the first movies I've seen in a while that really made me want to openly discuss this with people, and it did. I saw it for the people, and first thing we did when we come out is like, "Yo, what did you think? What did you think about this? What did you think about that?" And that is the sign of an excellent movie. Because spoiler alert, I think this is an excellent movie. Now, does it live up to the hype, the immense hype that it's been having? Because this is definitely one of those movies that seems to have broken through to the wider zeitgeist, and it's pulled people in to the tune of huge numbers at the box office. I seen with a full movie theater, 2 weeks after it kind of came out, which is a sign of something that is truly kind of resonating with people. And it's one of those films that you're going to tell your friends and other people that go watch this. You need to go see this. I want to know what you think about this. Like, it is definitely living in that realm of like the type of cinematic experience that is meant for theaters and that is meant for viewing, that's meant for discussions. And like overall, like it's definitely broken through, which is dope to see. It's the second look. Sinners. I don't know if I fully classify that as a horror, but let's just say it's a horror. It is the second kind of major horror to have come out this year that is truly broken through to the more mainstream, widespread kind of cultural zeitgeist that is going on. So like, super dope to see. I'm happy. I'm happy with the state of cinema right now. I'm glad that we're still getting these truly original tentpole kind of blockbuster films, and you don't get them at nearly as much as used to, but it is dope to see that the studio is still willing to take those risks. And it's also dope to see that like there are new younger filmmakers and directors coming up that have a true vision and a true voice, and that are like truly kind of like taking the mantle and like taking it upon their responsibility to continue this cinematic tradition that we all kind of know and love. So without further ado, like let's just like really get into it. As you can see from Rotten Tomatoes, Weapons has got an incredible rating, a 94% on their tomato meter, which is an 85% on their popcorn meter, which is the fans, and the tomato meter is the critics. So has a whopping 94% from the majority of critics, and like that is high praise for a kind of genre flick that doesn't always resonate with the widespread audience, especially one that is horror. Horror is a very kind of niche genre, even though it is obviously a huge aspect and a lot of people like it. It is still very niche and it's still very genre, and it's like one that doesn't necessarily pull people in all the time. It's either kind of like you love horror or you don't, but this one in particular seems to like literally appeal to all walks of life, and for very reasons that I think we will discuss. But as you can see from the top critics, Zach Creek, a lot of critics that you see in criticism that you'll see talking about this movie will be praising director Zach Krieger, and rightfully so, because I think he has such a strong voice and visual identity and kind of like storytelling process that you only get from true authors, and it's a rare thing. Let's say it's a rare thing to get from a filmmaker, and I feel like we got one here. I feel like this has established him as a true blue filmmaker to be on the watch for in the future. If you don't know who Zach Krieger is, he directed Barbarian, which came out, I want to say, a couple years ago now. 2022. It came out 2022. It was a much smaller kind of film, one that, wasn't really expected to make that much noise, but it did. It resonated with a lot of people. It got people talking about it. It got people really excited to see it. It is one of those that low-key went viral, in part also because of social media. But, it was a great lead into Weapons, to be quite honest, because if you liked Barbarian and you liked his style, you liked his voice in terms of filmmaking, you like kind of the storytelling element, you like his blend of like over the top humor, darkness, horror, like if you like that whole kind of blend amalgamation that he presents, then Weapons is definitely for you. Now, if you did not like Barbarian and you did not like it because of those same things, then I don't think Weapons is for you. But if you did not like Barbarian because of that second half of the film, which I could definitely be in that category that did not love the second half of Barbarian, then Weapons might not be for you. But it might, because I think he manages the ending and the second half of Weapons so much better than Barbarians. I'm not going to spoil Barbarian. If you have not seen it, go check it out. It's been out for a few years. I'm not going to spoil it, but needless to say, there was a very left field turn in that movie that rubbed people the wrong way or pulled people in even more. So it's kind of up to your discretion in terms of how you felt about how he ended that film. But if there's one kind of great evolutionary step in terms of filmmaking that I've noticed in this, is that he's gotten so much stronger in the second half, in the pacing, and just tying everything together in a wholly satisfying manner. I think he nailed that from front to back in Weapons. Straight out the back, does it live up to the hype? No. I don't think anybody can live up to the extreme hype level that was coming out about Weapons. But I think it got extremely close. I don't think anything could have lived up to the immense hype that was coming out about this movie. First off the bat, it is not a horror. Let's just be real. Like, this is horror adjacent and has horror elements, but it's definitely not a straight up horror. If anything, it's almost a thriller / mystery more than it is a straight up classic horror film. I'm not going to spoil too much about it, but there are moments that kind of like have you a little bit nervous, have you like on point, hairs on end, but there's nothing that is truly terrifying in this film. Like, there was no moment where you feel like you have to look away or your heart is racing out of your chest. There are none of those. But there is an incredible actual story here that starts with an absolutely amazing premise. Immediately from the jump from the trailer, when I first saw it, I was pulled in immediately. The whole premise of it is that there is a classroom of students that all got up at 2:17 in the morning from their homes and disappeared and vanished into the night. Only one classroom, and the mystery is why, where'd they go, and who's behind it. That is the premise of the movie. And it is a great fucking hook. One thing I will say about Zach Krieger is he has great hooks for his films. Barbarian had a great fucking hook as well. That first half had me fully sold, fully locked in, waiting to see what's going to happen next. Same with this one. The only difference is he knocks it out of the park in the second half as well. I don't think you could have ended or tied things together better in any better fashion than he did here. I heard and saw some interviews about some alternative endings that he was originally planning for, but I'm very glad with the decision that he chose. That is a very rare thing to do. The hardest part of any story is ending it, because he really seems like one of those writers that starts with a great premise, a great hook, and then he builds characters and finds a way to get to a satisfying end. And while that can create some great stories, some great moments, some great plots, it does not always lead to the best endings. But I do think he absolutely nailed it here. First off the bat, the characters, absolutely amazing. Everybody who performed in this film, grade A, top notch. I mean, Aunt Gladys, I'm sure you've seen from the memes, is obviously the standout breakout kind of star from this. Like, she nailed every scene she was in. She fully pulled you in, whether it was from a humorous, almost laugh moment to like fully like kind of creeped out, like serious, deadly serious kind of aspect. Like, she nailed it. For me, she was the breakout star. But what's her name? Julia Garner. She nailed her role. Josh Brolin killed it. The kid was amazing. And everybody in this film knocked it out of the park. The character building, the dialogue, the storytelling without having to tell you every single detail was on point. I think that is a huge strength of Krieger is that he's able to tell a story and is able to build characters and build a world without giving you every single fucking detail about them. Like, simple example, Julia Gardner on here, she's an alcoholic. She has a history, she has a past, but do you dive into all that? No, but you can kind of fully piece things together and feel like and kind of understand how she is and how she is who she is and like how she got to this point just from the cues and from just the little dialogue moments that we get with her and everything around her and like her interactions with other people without needing to know every single detail about her. Same with the police officer, same with the dad that's Josh Brolin. Like, there's just little hits here that tell you so much about a character without needing to fucking tell you every single detail, and that is the mark of a great storyteller. So off the back, characters amazing, plot amazing, premise amazing, not truly horror, but has some dark horror elements. And it has some surprisingly funny goddamn moments in this movie that I'm like, that's why I cannot call this a straight up horror or anything. Like, it is almost a genreless film. Let's be real. But that ending, what do I want to say about that ending? There's just so many things to say about that ending. Very rarely am I satisfied with a film at the end of a film, especially a thriller or a mystery that presents all these differing storylines and threads and elements that have to somehow coalesce into this wholly cohesive, satisfying manner. But I can't think of one thread here that he presented, one line that he put out there. Take that back. There is one line, and I'll speak about that in a second. I can't really think of one line that he presented in a story kind of line manner that was not concluded in a successful manner while still leaving things open enough for not only interpretation, but for possible sequels, prequels, spin-offs, whatever. Like, there's enough world building left in the story to continue if he feels like it, but still answers the main questions and reasons without necessarily hitting you over the head with it like an M. Night Shyamalan. But there's one moment in this film, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there's one moment with dealing with an assault rifle that to this day, people are still discussing that. I saw it like, what do you think it meant? What do you think it meant? Like, what is the purpose of this? What is the symbolism? Like, I think there's so many different elements and symbolism in this movie that I don't think he had necessarily an answer or a reason for exactly why all of these things were involved in it or why he put them in there. I just feel like he had a feeling, he put it in there, and he likes to have moments in his films that would, foster conversation, discussion, deep dives, theories, and, people kind of bringing themselves into the story. I think that's what he aims for, and he nailed it once again here, because there are definitely moments in here where you will find yourself wanting to discuss with the person and get their thoughts, opinions, and interpretations of what the fuck just happened and what the fuck did we just see? What did we just witness? I think there's one moment of this film that had that nails this feeling perfectly. Josh Brolin, the dad, is asleep in a bed. He has a very weird, fucking crazy dream. And he wakes up and then immediately says, what the fuck? It cut through the seriousness, the darkness, the dread of it all, and created like this very kind of funny tongue-in-cheek moment, but was perfectly delivered and perfectly reasonable for that situation, because that's exactly how the audience felt. What the fuck? So I don't think it quite lived up to the immense hype that it had, because I don't think it could have. I just think I just think the bar was set to a level that nobody could accomplish. But I do think it knocked it out of the park in terms of what it was trying to deliver. I think his disjointed kind of storytelling, which he mentioned was kind of an homage, so to say, inspired by, I believe it was Magnolia, that has all these different perspectives and storylines and you see the same instance from a different perspective, and you see kind of how they got there, where you learn more about these characters, and then they all kind of come together at the end. I just think that was an incredible tightrope to kind of walk, incredibly difficult to pull off in any meaningful, satisfying manner, and he knocked it out of the fucking park. He did. Like, everything about this film just hit. And I think if I was gonna say, like, I haven't seen a lot of movies, I haven't seen nearly as many movies I normally have from this year, but in terms of favorite movies from this year, this might be at the absolute top. Like, I have no problem sitting down and watching this one again. I think it washes Sinners. I know, blasphemous. Like, as much as Sinners was enjoyable to some degree, I don't think it was nearly as good as people are saying it is to be. It's not my favorite Ryan Coogler film, probably one of my least favorite ones of his. But this one, I think we have a new star filmmaker on deck, and I'm very excited to see anything he does in the future. And yeah, like I said, like, there are so many elements of this movie that I want to talk about and break down and like really dive into, but I don't want to spoil it for people considering it's still in theaters. But my overall reaction to this film is that it is easily one of the best films to have come out so far this year. It is a must see, and Zach Krieger is a future star in the making. Now, I want to continue with this. We have an article over on our site called "The 7 Loudest Arguments from the Ongoing Weapons Discourse" from one of our top writers over there, Steven Silver. Go check that out if you haven't. But it's just him discussing weapons, this new film, the kind of impact it's had, which obviously a film of this degree is going to create a lot of conversation and discourse. And it did. It created a lot of discussion, and some of the arguments that I want to talk about are argument number 1, the "it's about nothing" thing. The biggest critique I've seen leveled at weapons is that it's about nothing, and the Hollywood Reporter looked at this. It's no surprise the film has led discussion about its deeper meaning, but the most frustrating point among them is the argument shared by several critics and a wider collection of the audience that the film doesn't have a deeper meaning. It's ultimately about nothing. And my kind of response to this is, so like, who cares? Like, not every film has to have these deeper meanings or deeper metaphors, the deeper symbolisms. Like, a movie can just be a movie. Like, the movie, the storyline, the movie watching experience can be the purpose of the film. At one point, that was what defined a blockbuster. And this is a blockbuster, considering its response in terms of, like, traffic to the movie theater and ticket sales and reviews and conversations. I do think there's a lot of symbolism and metaphors and meaning behind a lot of things that he puts in this movie. But I think overall, there's not like one giant glaring message for you to take away from it. If anything, I think the purpose of this was to do exactly what it's doing now, and that is creating discourse and conversation. At one point, movies were about creating water cooler conversation in the office, and this fills that role perfectly. Because while he gives you answers, he gives you meaning, he gives you these deeper kind of themes, at points, he leaves it open enough to bring your own interpretation, your own meaning, your own thoughts into the story as yourself, the viewer, which only makes you feel more attached to the story in the movie. I think it's just a genius move, and I don't think every movie needs to have some deeper metaphorical meaning behind it. In fact, I'm glad this one didn't. I just wanted, it's just an enjoyable movie. And enjoyable movies can just be enjoyable movies. Argument number 2 is the QAnon thing. Some people who saw Weapons saw parallels between the film and the QAnon conspiracy theory, especially the part about a bunch of children disappearing and adults trying to find a conspiratorial scapegoat for it. Okay. My response to this is, cults and conspiracy theories and all that art is nothing new. If anything, it's as old as society in itself. So the fact that he's tapping into like this, I don't want to say it, tapping into this paranoid, conspiratorial groupthink that can happen when something as tragic and traumatic as 17, I think it's 17 kids getting up and disappearing from their homes in the middle of the night would cause. That's nothing new, and there's nothing directly tied to QAnon. In fact, I don't think it had anything to do with QAnon or any kind of political elements that have come before it. I just think it taps into what is a primal aspect of society and humanity, and which is conspiracy theories and cultish kind of mob mentality. I think if anything, that's just a conversation on our society as a whole and our experiences as humans and humanity as being as a whole, and how anything in our lives can and has been weaponized against each other. I think that's generally what he was kind of aiming for, which is also why he named it Weapons. My personal thoughts. Argument number 3 is the hag exploitation thing. The ultimate villain of Weapons. Again, spoiler, it's going to be Gladys. If anything, we're going to skip this one. But the exploitation is basically about picking some old shrewish woman or witch and kind of like using her as the ultimate evil or sign of evil or everything that's wrong in society. Nothing new. Obviously, witches in films and filmmaking and old women being evil, it has been a tried and true aspect of film forever. So I will never levy that against them. I think it worked here perfectly. They could have put an old dude in there, but honestly, seeing her in this role, would you want anybody else portraying that? I wouldn't. The AR thing, again, this is one of the most controversial moments in Weapons. Comes when his dad, Bubba, during dream scenes, sees a giant AR-15 rifle floating above his house. Again, some spoilers here. If you don't want to hear, skip it. But I've been seeing this argument going around where people are arguing that this is about, gun control or gun violence or, school shootings or whatnot. While, there might be some allusion to that or some kind of deeper backing behind it, and you can make those kind of connections. I don't think he even knew what the fuck he was thinking when he put it in there, quite honestly, because it was so random and it was so left field. I feel like he just felt like he needed some weird dream sequence element. And seeing as the movie is called Weapons, I think he kind of just threw it in there and wanted to create some sort of conversation. But it could also be tied into some wider topics. I just don't think it is. Weapons things. Okay, the Magnolia thing is about its influence on weapons and how the different perspectives and timelines and how everything is kind of a disjointed story that comes together and end is very, very clear that it is an influence on this film. And the recasting thing, who cares? I'm glad they recast it. I think he got the cast that he needed and deserved for this film. One other topic about this I wanted to discuss is there's a trend. There's a trend amongst directors right now. Some of our best, brightest new directors were all former comedians or had something to do in the field of comedy. And obviously, a very obvious one would be a Jordan Peele. Is the first thought when you think of okay, who's a director who turned to filmmaking, who turned to horror and was successful? Number one, right off the bat, Jordan Peele. Obviously, he's had a ton of success in filmmaking. He created this very unique voice and brought it to film and horror. And he kind of is the blueprint to come from that world to this world. And Zach Krieger, if you don't know, he was also in a sketch comedy troupe. The Whitest Kids You Know, I think it's called. And now he's produced 2 horror films and 2 very successful horror films that have a unique voice, a unique perspective, and kind of has created this trend and continued this trend of comedians or people or formerly in comedy turning to film as directors and finding immense success. I mean, I can think of Jordan Peele, not in horror, but I can think of Todd Phillips, obviously having huge success with Joker 2, not so much. You have Bill, is it Bill Hader? Yes, you have Bill Hader, who went to directing with Barry, which is a dark comedy, has some very serious tones and some very goofy, absurd, kind of like very similar to like Horror and Barbarian, where it's like this very dark, serious kind of themes and topics going on, but then undercut by these absurd moments and that are just that you just have to laugh at. And somehow, you know, they make it work. Kevin Smith obviously has had a ton of success in film. I just think that there's this trend and this very obvious thing that's happening where comedians might be some of the best directors out there. And I think a large part of that, because especially when it comes to horror, I think why comedians are so successful and good in telling, you know, compelling horror stories is because as a comedian, a lot in comedy, you're dealing with dark, sensitive topics and you're approaching it from like this very well thought out perspective, whether it's in a funny haha moment or like, you know, breaking something down for an audience. And like that ability translate perfectly for something like horror, which is dealing with these very dark, serious, the worst aspects of life topics, and their ability to look at these with straight face and break it down to its core elements and get to the gist and the story of it and the real kind of tragedy and meaning behind it, and still able to deliver like some moments of brightness and cut through some of the absurdness, because horror in itself is just an absurd genre for the most part. And like to be able to find the storyline through something so just left field and absurd is a specialty of comics. That's what they do. And I think that's why it translates so well to horror films and so well to like dark comedy and so well to just film in general, is because they are able to break down storylines, because they do it all the time on stage for an audience, for a wide audience to grasp, that it just translates perfectly to film. And, you know, it just seems to be a continuing trend. And it's one that, you know, I don't know who the next comedian is going to be, but I wouldn't be surprised if the next big director is also another comedian, because they just have this way of connecting with an audience that just other directors just don't seem to be able to these days. So fire. I'm very excited to see anything that Zach Krieger has to do, but that is my overall general thoughts about Weapons. You guys let me know what you think about that movie if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, do you have any questions? I'll try to answer what I can for you. But easily, probably my favorite movie of the year so far, and just kind of the tentpole example for this year of exceptional horrors that we're getting right now. And if you have not seen it, go tap in. It's absolutely fire.